How's it going, guys? ShizuCats here, and today I'm going to be giving you guys my opinion on who are the best 5-star units to reroll for in Octopath Traveler Champions of the Continent. There are 8 5-star units that you can get on the initial release of the game, and today we're going to be analyzing each of those characters and determining who I think are the ones you should be rolling for to kick off your account. Also, we'll be taking a look at not only the character's viability on release, but also considering their viability down the line once future characters and future content have been added to the game, as well as noting some great lower rarity units that you can pair with them to increase their effectiveness. All of the skill information and stats are from my character index spreadsheet that I maintain for the JP game, which I will leave a link to in the description box. Now, let's get started. We're going to be going through the 8 characters in order by class, starting with the Dark Warrior Fiore. Fiore is an extremely reliable physical attacker. Not only does she have a very high physical attack stat, but she also has 2 passives that each boost her physical strength even further. At the start of battle, she gains 20% attack up for 3 turns, and while at full HP, also gains an additional 20% sword damage up, allowing her to hit extremely hard, especially at the start of fights. She also has a lot of great sword skills. Most often, you'll find yourself using her 3-hit sword single target, 2-hit sword AoE round duel, and her iconic Collapse Charge, a fat nuke that also decreases the defense of the target for 2 turns. She's a great warrior for all situations, shaving down shield points, nuking against a single enemy or many. Her shortcomings are her lack of good dark attacking options, and the fact that 2 of her best skills, Round Duel and Collapse Charge, are locked behind her 5th star. However, her reliability as a sword attacker puts her at a really high tier in my opinion, and even now in JP she is still one of the most popular warriors to use. A great unit to bring in your party alongside Fiore is Sigrid, one of the best 4-star warriors available. On top of her already solid kit, Sigrid has a great passive that helps further boost Fiore's already impressive damage, giving all enemies a 15% sword defense down debuff at the start of every fight. When combined with Fiore's 3-turn attack up passive, you can make extremely quick work of foes that are weak to swords. Up next we have Gilderoy, the Merchant. Where Fiore is a reliable attacker, Gilderoy is a reliable tank. He has high HP and defenses, which when combined with his taunt skill, allows him to take a lot of punishment. His main claim to fame is his AoE taunt skill, which also increases his physical and magic defense at the same time. Another skill you can utilize in combination with the taunt is his counter buff, which will allow Gilderoy to automatically counterattack any physical hits. These counters will reduce shield points if the enemies are weak to spears, so you can potentially get a lot of value out of these, especially against enemies who can attack multiple times per turn. On the offensive side, Gilderoy has access to 2-hit single target spear, Heal Spike, a 1-hit single target spear that also heals him, and Bolt Spike and Chain Lightning, 2 attacks that have a chance to inflict paralysis on any enemy's hit. As a 4.5 star, he misses out on Heal Spike, a reliable source of nuke damage and healing, but still maintains his 2-hit spear attack as well as his taunt, which in my opinion are 2 of his most important assets. He was rated as an S tier character upon release in JP, but personally I would rate him on the lower end of the starter 8 when the long term is taken into account. Having a tank character is really helpful when your roster is smaller and you're not building teams specifically to take on certain bosses yet. When you're in the early game and have a sort of mishmash team of 8 going up against enemies with unknown weaknesses, you're not going to be in a position to speed through the fight like you would if you were completely prepared, which makes Gilderoy a bit better in those fights. However, as your roster grows and you can prioritize a big offense, having a tank around just makes the whole process slower. Also, Gilderoy actually has a very capable 4-star substitute character in Devon, who shares his ability to taunt enemies and buff his own defenses, and even has built-in regen. If you do want to make the most out of Gilderoy though, I would recommend putting him in a party with Mina or Mabel. Mina can cast defensive buffs on your front row, while Mabel can cast magic defense buffs. Combine either of these with the buffs that Gilderoy already gives himself when he casts his taunt, and you'll have a massive tank that can take anything your enemies can throw at him. Next up is Viola, the Fire Thief. Viola is one of the strongest utility units available and will remain as such for months to come. Even as a 4.5 star, she maintains her most valuable assets, anti-attack and anti-guard, which inflict 20% attack and magic down, and 20% defense and magic defense down, respectively. When combined with her passive, which extends the duration of debuffs inflicted by Viola or her bro buddy, she can keep opponents weakened for entire fights. Her 3rd slot is flexible depending on what you need. She has access to 3-hit single target dagger, 2-hit fire shield crack, or a one-hit fire AoE that also inflicts 10% defense down, which stacks with the defense down given by her anti-guard. At 5-star, she gains access to Double Wide Burst, a 2-hit AoE dagger shield crack. When you account for her lightning fast speed stat as well, she can debuff and break enemies before they have a chance to lay a finger on your team. In terms of characters you can bring alongside Viola, she's a very independent character, so there's no specific character she works especially well with. However, since her debuff extension passive works on both herself and the other character in her row, pairing her with a debuff character can get you some extra value. Helga is an interesting character you could pair her with, as she has a 2-hit spear attack that inflicts 2 turns of speed down per hit. Normally, this would result in 4 turns of speed down debuff total, but with Viola's passive, it becomes 6 turns instead. After Viola is the first of our 2 healing classes, Theo the Lightning Apothecary. Theo's main asset and what sets him apart from our other healer Millard is his party-wide regen skill. Having access to regen means that Theo can cast it once with max BP to get a regen that lasts several turns, and then spend those turns doing other things besides healing. On the offensive side, he has 3-hit Axe Random Target, a powerful single-target Lightning Nuke, and his signature offensive skill, Double Harvest, a 2-hit AoE axe attack. As a 4.5 star, you're mainly missing out on Double Harvest, but he's still a serviceable healer nonetheless, especially since he gains immediate access to a party-wide regen skill from level 1. As Theo is a relatively self-sufficient character, he doesn't have any particularly strong interactions with other characters. However, if you want to get a bit of extra punch out of his lightning skills, consider bringing along Bertrand, whose passive applies lightning defense down on all enemies for the first 3 turns of battle. Moving on to the back half, we have Scarecrow, the Wind Hunter. Scarecrow is one of those characters where you look at his skills before and after 5 stars, and it's just a world of difference. He has access to a massive 4-hit AoE bow attack, and 4-hit Wind Random Target locked behind his 5-star version, and his skills prior to that are just very average. 2-hit bow single target, 2-hit bow AoE, 1-hit wind AoE, these are the kinds of skills that 4-star hunters can match or sometimes even do better than. That being said, he still does quite well in the damage department, having access to 2 passives that both boost his damage output. One gives him an extra 20% damage against enemies in break, and the other gives an extra 20% damage on his crits. Moving forward, Scarecrow will eventually get outclassed by other hunters, but for the first few months he is a very strong attacking unit, at least when you have him as a 5-star. With his passive that gives him extra damage against broken enemies, you'll want to have allies that can quickly and reliably lower enemy shield points. Assuming you're bringing him to a fight where the enemy is weak to bows, we'll want to look for the best hunter companion to bring along to the fight. Lucetta is a great candidate, with her 3-hit bow attack, and she also has access to an AoE defense down debuff to boot. Next up is our second healer, Millard the Light Cleric. Millard is the true definition of support unit, with no multi-hit attacks whatsoever, but carries a plethora of healing and buffing abilities. His main asset will be his strong full party heals, boosted an extra 20% by his passive. Additionally, his second passive refunds some of his SP when he takes damage, allowing him to keep healing the team. Outside of that, he has a medium damage staff nuke that inflicts attack down, useful against physical attacking enemies, and a party-wide magic defense buff, useful against magic enemies. He has access to some light magic as well, and will be the strongest available light attacker for a decent while. As an overall unit, I'm going to rate him on the lower end due to not having access to a regen skill. No regen means that you may find yourself in a position where Millard has to spam heals every turn and can't even make use of the rest of his kit. That being said, simply because of how premium healing is in COTC due to the lack of in-battle items, having either Theo or Millard is already a strong start on a new account. Sometimes, the best companion to Millard is actually another healer, taking some of the healing burden off of him and letting him perform some of his other roles. Cedric and Menno are 4-star clerics who both have access to regen, but outside of that, Cedric has access to fire magic and defense down, while Menno has access to wind magic and speed down, so feel free to bring whichever is suitable. For our first mage, we have Sofia the Ice Scholar. As you can see, Sofia's kit is full of ice options of all varieties. Her main offensive options are her ice defense down debuff skills, which can stack with each other by the way, allowing her to debuff for 30% ice defense down all by herself. This means that she supports her own damage output very well, and she can follow up her debuffs with powerful nukes. Additionally, while at full HP, her spells have their SP cost cut in half, so keeping her healthy will allow her to continuously cast spell after spell. As a 4.5 star, she still has access to her debuffs and only loses access to a bit of damage ceiling. In the long run, Sofia will actually be succeeded for her Ice Queen role by Cyrus, but she will not be outright replaced by him. Rather, she makes a fantastic ice support unit alongside Cyrus, utilizing her debuffs to allow him to deal astronomically high amounts of damage, while still doing respectable damage herself. In the meantime, an amazing unit to pair Sofia with comes from a pretty unlikely place, the Thief class. Azlight is a mage in disguise, with the ability to cast 3-hit ice spells, in addition to inflicting ice defense down. If Azlight gets a break on an enemy, which is quite common since she is a thief, thus making her very fast, she inflicts additional ice defense down to that enemy, setting up Sofia to do massive amounts of damage. Lastly, we have Lynette, the Fire Dancer. Lynette has access to a pair of extremely strong buffs. Her main asset is her party-wide attack and magic up buff, giving big boosts to your entire team's damage for the next several turns. Additionally, her passive has a buff element as well. Every time Lynette swaps between the front and back row, all allies currently in the front row at the time of swapping will gain an extra 10% attack and magic up for the remainder of the turn. Due to her high speed stat, she will be able to act before most of your other allies, allowing her to apply her buffs right as your other characters come in swinging. At 5-star, she gains 2 more powerful skills, a 2-hit fire AoE that also inflicts fire defense down on all enemies, and Kakuran no Mai, a 3-hit fan attack that also inflicts magic defense down. While these skills are extremely strong, she's still a very useful unit at 4.5 star simply due to the potency of her buffs. In the long run, Lynette will eventually be one of the strongest buffers in the game due to her ultimate skill that she gains much later down the line. As far as who to pair her with, you can honestly slot her into any team, as her buffs are valuable no matter who else is in your party. By the way, for one last quick thing I want to add, if you roll a Lynette dupe, I would recommend not using it immediately to get her to Awakening 1. An Awakening Stone is eventually needed for special abilities to reach level 10, which aren't currently in the game yet. And while a level 10 special is unnecessary for a majority of the cast, it's part of what makes Lynette extremely powerful down the line. And yes, while I know this gives off pay-to-win vibes, this is pretty much the only time I'm ever going to make this big of a deal out of an Awakening. As you play the game more, you'll have plenty more opportunities to randomly hit a dupe Lynette, so don't go out of your way to try to get one. If it happens, it happens. In the meantime, I'm also going to have a video exclusively on how to optimally use Lynette, so look forward to that. So, with the evaluations out of the way, here's my reroll priority tier list. Viola and Lynette are the very top, as they are extremely high value utility units that will still remain relevant well into the game's lifespan. After that, we have Theo and Fiore. These two serve completely different roles but are both equally useful in their own ways. Theo is of course valuable for his regen skill, while Fiore is capable of dishing out high amounts of damage, even against enemies who aren't weak to swords. Additionally, she has access to the defense down debuff on her collapse charge that can bolster your entire team's physical damage. Next is Sofia. While she is a strong character and will slot into powerful ice compositions later on, she's significantly less powerful if the enemy isn't weak to ice. She can still debuff the enemy's ice defense down and deal reasonable damage with her nukes, but you'd be better off slotting a relevant 4-star unit instead. After Sofia is Scarecrow. He has access to some very powerful abilities, but they're locked behind his 5-star version, and even if you have the 5-star, they are unlocked extremely late. For a brand new account, I'd rather prioritize other 5-stars, and settle for some of the very decent lower rarity hunters, like the aforementioned Lucetta. Finally, we have Millard and Gilderoy on the bottom tier. Millard not having access to team-wide regen is a pretty big weakness in my opinion, and Gilderoy's defensive prowess will eventually fall off as you become stronger and don't need to crutch on him anymore. Both of these characters also have very capable lower rarity substitutions, such as Ramona in the Cleric class and Devin in the Merchants. Hope you guys enjoyed my reroll tier list for Octopath Traveler Champions of the Continent. One of my future videos that I plan on uploading is a guide on the lower rarity characters, as many of them are extremely useful and I want to highlight for you guys how you can best utilize those characters. So, thanks for watching everyone, this has been Shizukats, and I'll see you next time. Bye!